Minimalist and modernist is how our next guest likes to describe his work. Today we're speaking with our guest, Head of Global Design, Tata Motors, Mr. Martin Uhlarik. Welcome.
Hello, pleased to meet you again.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you all have done in terms of design to make the new Nexon more aerodynamic?
So when we were designing it, during the design process, you do a lot of aerodynamic studies. So first you do a CFD study, which is a fluid dynamic analysis. So it's just data. And you have a target. We already know the weight of the car, the size of the car, and also how aerodynamic we want it to be. And the digital, the CFD study will tell us where we are. Then we have a full-size clay model and we take it into a wind tunnel.
Right.
And we get suggestions from the aerodynamics team, and our designers are in the tunnel and they add material, they take off material. It's a quite very straightforward sort of, you're just experimenting.
Okay.
And then some of it, you can see the front bumper of the new Nexon. It has an air curtain, so the wind goes inside, comes out with where the wheels are.
Right.
Same with the rear. But we also got the recommendation to extend the spoiler. Then, so the spoiler is longer. That helps the overall turbulence behind the car. And then we also designed the wheel, so it has, you can have it straight alloy, or you can have these ones which has an insert, so it becomes more flat.
Right.
So it's an option.
Okay.
And of course that also makes it more aerodynamic. And everywhere, every millimeter of the car is looked at. And sometimes we get a recommendation, oh, if it's a sharp edge, can you make it softer? So even on the nose of the car, where the upper grille is, the DRLs, the black part, the radii was recommended by aerodynamics. You think it's not so important, but actually all of it makes a difference.
Right.
And then you add up all the totals and you get the target, and then you get your number.
Right.
And it's part of the design process.
Okay. The front fascia, in fact, it just gave me, the first time I looked at it on Instagram just a couple of days back, it just gave me a whole Knight Rider kind of vibe. It's like David Hasselhoff's Knight Rider right there. So if you can just take us through, and tell us a little bit about, what are the changes, because it's really different.
Yes, it's very different, but we wanted it to be also quintessentially or unmistakably a Nexon.
Right, and I'm going to come to that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, but that's
a
a big responsibility, because it is a hugely successful product, a car and design. It's been around for years. It's our best-selling car, so we have to be very careful not to change the recipe so much that people don't understand it, or they don't see a Nexon.
Right.
So to be honest, you should know that it's a Nexon without reading the Nexon name. You should just visually know it's a Nexon. So it's a SUV. It's very capable. It's very fashionable, and then at the same time aspirational. And then it has to be seen as a leader. The Nexon was always the class leader.
Right.
So you have to keep that going. So we saw the investment in technology. So for instance, like you said with the front, the biggest change in the front is the technology of the lamps.
Right.
We make now LED DRLs, but also the main lamp unit is very small.
Right.
So we put that down in the bumper, and that liberated the designers as well, because you have more room. If you think about the original Nexon lamp, just because of the technology available at the time, it's a very large unit.
Right.
Now the unit is probably 1/8 the size, and that's also offered the designers far more design freedom.
Right.
But ultimately, you have to make a car which has proportions that communicate strength, safety. Those are the backbones of what a Nexon is.
Right. Right. This brings me to a question. Last time you mentioned that the interiors are very important. Sometimes even more than the
Yes,
exteriors.
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the new materials that you may have used on the interiors, as
Mhm,
well as
mhm.
how different is it? I can already see there's a
Yeah,
lot of change.
with this interior, when we looked at it, we said, how do we improve the interior experience? So for instance, we wanted to put soft material on the instrument panel, which we didn't have before. The trend is softer interiors in general, more soft trimming.
Right.
Then, of course, we wanted to create a digital experience. I always say this is the digital SUV. So now the screens are a TFT, dominated by the 12-inch screen in the center, and the steering wheel, to be honest, is completely new. It was the one inspired by the curve concept.
Yes, I saw that.
And we
Right.
also showed a variant of that on the Sierra,
Mhm.
which we showed at Auto Expo. So this is now the production version. And it looks like a games console. So the designer who designed it was clearly inspired by that. It's the digital interface into the user experience.
Interesting.
And all of the buttons now have gone from mechanical to basically flush capacitive switches. There are a couple of mechanical switches, but those are the key safety ones which are important, the ones you use the most.
Right.
Those are obviously, physical, because
Right.
when you're driving, you don't want to be looking,
Yeah.
from an unsafe point of view.
Right.
But the other ones are fundamentally, capacitive. What it does is it makes the interior look much cleaner, and it gives you the perception. The car hasn't grown in size, but it gives you the feeling and the perception that the interior is larger.
Right.
And there's a feeling of more spaciousness, less visual clutter, less stress.
Right.
And then from a materials point of view, obviously we're showing this car now, the launch we have now the persona strategy. So instead of the traditional trim levels, we have the persona, so it's a lifestyle choice. This is called Fearless. So it's the most bold color palette. And to be honest, it's fearless in many ways and bold like the Nexon. So we thought that's the most appropriate one. We also wanted to make a statement. So the interior obviously has the purple theme on the interior, but that's not the only one we offer. We offer many personas, 4, and a lot of material choices. And for instance, here we redesigned the seat on the Nexon. One of the feedbacks we received with the Nexons up to now was maybe the seats could have a bit more support. So we redesigned it. We gave more lateral support, so a bit more side support. And at the same time, it was an opportunity to create a seat that looks very dynamic, very sporty. It's also a cooled seat, so it has airflow on the front. Only for the front seats. And overall, it gave us an opportunity. So if once you look at all of the different personas, you'll see that the different seats are very, very wide spectrum that the customer can choose from.
Interesting. You did talk about this, slightly, just a couple of minutes back, but just, to kind of draw you in again on that question. When you design a concept and taking that concept and turning it into something physical,
yes,
is that easier as compared to being boxed in by a former car and the traditions that you have to
to be honest, it's sometimes it depends on the program and the project. For instance, this was a different challenge. You have a very established, successful product, but you're being asked to improve it, redesign it, keep it relevant, because nothing stands still in life. So you look at where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses as an analysis, and you go, where can we improve the car? And you have to be strategic because you have to design to a specific budget as well. So it's a different, of course, then when you have the opposite, you have a full blank sheet of paper and you can do it. Sometimes that's more harder when you have absolutely, you can do anything you want and then you don't know what you want. So it depends, and there's different challenges. Of course, we have a very wide portfolio of products. We have 8 models in our portfolio. Each one has its own character, each one has its own things, and each one, when we're designing it, is at different stages of its life.
Sure.
So that's the designer's role, is to analyze what you have to do and design around those parameters. And I always believe that the tighter the restrictions, the more creative the designers get.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Last time we also spoke about trucks, and we spoke about them, in more of a lifestyle-ish way. What's happening on that front?
Well, obviously, our design team also works in the CV sphere, and so at the moment we're designing a number of programs and projects from small to large. Some of them are a completely new product, and some of them are, an upgrade. A truck design, when you're designing that, it's a tool. It's a professional tool.
Right.
So it has to get the job done.
Right.
It has to communicate. The driver will be safe. He will deliver the goods from A to B as efficiently as possible. If it's a company buying a fleet, they want that reliability, that it will get the job done. So it's like a product design exercise. It doesn't have to be so emotional. It's a functional thing.
Right.
But actually, there's a lot of enjoyment you can get from designing products like that.
Okay.
And to be honest, our design team actually has a lot of creativity, even doing those type of vehicles. Whether it's a commercial vehicle or a bus, all of it still needs good design.
Right.
And it's the same group of people, the same talent, the same creativity, the same design tools going into that, just as much as for the passenger vehicle.
Interesting. Okay. You mentioned color palettes just some time back, and I'm just trying to get an idea from you as to what the latest trends might be, or what are the latest colors that y'all are looking at Tata Motors.
Well, in Tata Motors, first of all, I think we're always seen as a design leader.
Yeah.
So that means taking risk and being bold and confident.
Right.
At the same time, Tata Motors is an Indian car company. And when I travel to India and I see the Indian landscape, I'm always amazed how vibrant, how colorful the country is. And I always feel that the automobile industry is maybe a little bit conservative.
Oh, is that so?
In general, even globally. If I'm in any other market, there's not so much color in a parking lot nowadays. Of course, people buying a vehicle, it's a big investment, so people are fairly safe. But at the same time, I think if you have a couple of like this color, we call this color Fearless, and we drove it this morning to downtown Jaipur and just parked it, and I saw the reaction. And I was quite surprised how many people liked the color and were willing to buy the color. Wow. Because for one thing is, okay, you make a very bold color statement that reflects the confidence of the company, and maybe the confidence and the fearlessness of the customers. But maybe you think, okay, that's going to be a small percentage. But then I was quite surprised how many people reacted positively to that. I think people are more bold than we think. And we need to offer them that choice. Of course, we're offering a palette of colors. Right. So that's the thing, is you offer them the choice, and we have something for all seasons.
Sure. Yeah. What are the colors that you see coming up in the next few years? What do you have your eye on? Well,
I don't want to say too much, because we have a number of very cool colors in development. But if I say what we're doing, we might give away some of our secret.
But just like broadly speaking,
well,
what can we look at? What can we expect?
For instance,
where will the auto industry head?
Yes.
Suddenly, orange was in, and everybody was doing orange.
Yes.
Then,
there's a one color it's no secret. It's a kind of rouge, coral, pastel direction. Okay. You see that now in fashion, which is a much quicker industry. Yeah. You see it in furniture industry. And also the other trend is greens, but different tones of greens. And I think it's also a bit psychological. I've seen it in design fairs like London, Milan, India and Mumbai.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at interiors, you have a lot of warm tones and you have a lot of green. Sometimes it's emerald green, sometimes it's a more pastel-y green.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see this as a trend because green is a color that calms people down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are looking for a little bit less stress.
Sure.
And it's very reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a certain psychology behind that. So I could definitely see that emerging in the next couple of years. You can see that the industry catching some of those trends.
Wow. Okay. So if you want to just basically walk us around the car and just
Sure.
kind of give us an insight into what's new, especially on the inside. Tell us a little bit about the interiors of the new Nexon.
So you can see the main focus was to create something that's very premium, very comfortable, but also very much a digital space. So the interior is dominated by the two digital screens here, and then the steering wheel, which is in many ways the interface for the user experience, for the driver. So the first thing is that the logo is off and it illuminates when you turn the car on. So that already communicates, just like, in overall, it's like the website, for instance. It's a digital landscape. This is the games console.
Wow.
For thing. And actually the designer who designed this was very young, and when we said come up with some ideas for a steering wheel, and he had an image board full of PlayStation and Xbox and all these games console. Then he said, this is what the steering wheel is. It's like the games console. So he designed it without this first, just as a unit, if he held it, and how would he use it. And then he added the rim afterwards. And we thought it was a management, everybody thought it was a fantastic avatar for what we want to communicate. Then you can see what traditionally used to be mechanical switches are now capacitive touchscreen switches. But you do have, the amount of...
Express cooling turned on. Windows may roll down.
I'll lower that. And so you can see that all the switches, other than a couple of fuel. Then we redesigned part of the center console, and we have this new gear lever, which is very, very sort of clean, modern, and easy to use in terms of this is an automatic. And then we redesigned the vents, so they're much slimmer than before, but they have the same performance, and that makes the interior look wider, and it makes it look more roomy.
More aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
And even things like this, the design team worked in terms of when you use the button, it has a certain sort of quality. Feel. It's not just a plastic piece that's loose.
Sliding. Yes, absolutely.
And even the finish of the thing is now very sleek, and it matches the button here and it matches the button here. And overall, and then the final thing is we added a trimmed piece here, which has actually a leather stitch line. And so different materials, there's actually then a version in the pure, which has a sort of very nice fabric, and that's applied here. And that gives it a warmer, more, inviting interior feeling space. And then of course we're sitting in the new seats, and the seats are, far more sort of supportive than before. And of course we also came up with a look that gives us as much color range as possible. So many ideas, and an interior is the sum of many parts. It's ergonomics, it's materials, it's technology, it's interface. So it's a combination of product design, furniture design, ergonomics, packaging, functionality, safety, and then you add it all up, and then it creates an atmosphere and an ambience.
Right.
That's.
And how would you describe this atmosphere, this ambience? Considering the seats are
if down.
Considering the seats are grey, and there's a lot of use of black. If you had to describe it in one word.
Smarty is out of range.
Something very like a.
Check.
Hold on. A very sort of inviting technical experience. So it's like sitting on your sofa if you're playing or you're watching television, or you're watching a movie, or playing a video game. It's a very engaging, but at the same time comfortable experience.
Excellent. The seats are really fabulous. I'm really looking forward to driving this tomorrow. I mean, I'm just sitting here, and it's really,
I couldn't
ask for anything better.
I can't wait to hear what you think, because it's one thing to sit in it like now, but then it's another thing to drive it. We drove it today in the city, and also seeing it outside in the daylight, in the landscape, it's completely different. Ultimately, that's what we're designing for.
Right.
Not the showroom, but the road.
Oh, absolutely. Great. So thank you so much.
No,
It's been
thank
a
you. It
real
was nice
pleasure.
talking to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.